welcome. We're glad you tuned in. We don't know if you was channel surfing or you intentionally were looking for a good show. Well, today we have a good show. I have an in-studio guest, and hey, it's on a subject that I bet you've been waiting on. We're talking about backyard ponds today, and I do have an in-studio guest. Hey, do me a favor, get a pad, call a friend, and tell them that the Paul White Show is on. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back. We're glad you came back. You're watching the Paul White Show. I do have a guest today, and my guest is Mike Kandt from the Kansas Pond Society. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you, Paul.
Glad to have you here today. You know, this is a subject that I guess we're starting a little early this year, which is good. Backyard ponds. I get a lot of questions on backyard ponds. I want to put in one, but I'm a little afraid to put in one. I don't know what the challenge would be, but I love backyard ponds. What's some suggestion you can give our viewers today on ponds, on backyard ponds, putting in one, getting started?
Well, I think it's a lot of people are intimidated by them, and it's really the maintenance is not that much more, and sometimes even less than a flower garden of the same size.
Right.
It's once you get it set up and going, there's not a whole lot of maintenance to do. In starting a pond, I like to tell people to look at the location of the pond, locate it where it is close to your outdoor living areas. If you have a patio or a space where you spend a lot of time outdoors, locate your pond there. Don't stick it in the back corner of the yard just because you don't have anything in that corner. This is going to be enough effort and expense to put one in that you want to get the maximum out of it that you can. So get it up close where you can see it frequently and appreciate it. Other than that, I wouldn't go too big. I wouldn't go too small. I would say a pond in the neighborhood of 1,000, 1,500, maybe 2,000 gallons is a good size. On the depth, I would go to at least 30 inches to 3 feet. If you're going to want to put fish in there, that gives the fish place to winter over. And no, you don't have to bring the fish in the winter. If you get goldfish or koi. Some people do put native fish in there. Frankly, I would avoid that just simply because native fish are really good at camouflage, and you don't see them. And so with the ornamental fish, such as the goldfish and koi, you can see them better and appreciate them more. And that's what I'd recommend.
Yeah, in Kansas, I probably wouldn't put in one under the depth that you were talking about because you can't winter fish over, and it's a hassle to bring them in, reacclimate them into an aquarium to overkeep them during the winter and trying to feed them and in an aquarium, and that's more maintenance inside than it would be outside. And a lot of people, I'll be glad when spring come back where I can put my fish back outside. Yeah. So you need to consider the depth when you're putting in a pond, and like you said, the size of a pond too. The right size, it's going to be less maintenance. The smaller you get it, it's going to take more maintenance to maintain your fish and to keep the pond clean, filtration, water circulation, and all of this. And when you put in one outside, you definitely need water circulation in it.
Oh yeah, you really must have that. If not, the water will get stagnant and smelly and so forth. But with circulation and aeration,
right,
it will be just very, very nice. It will not smell. It hopefully will be clear and so forth. Some people will get circulation with a waterfall down at one end, and perhaps a skimmer down at the other to let water flow through the pond. If you do have one that's smaller, sometimes just a spitter will work. That they'll have a little statue of a something that spits water with a pump down in the water and so forth.
Right.
But all of that works good.
So yeah, it does. It keeps the oxygen in there for the fish to breathe, and like you say, your water circulation too, which helps with everything. Mosquitoes, accumulation. If you got circulation, then you have way less mosquitoes around the pond and all this type of stuff. And it helps the plants too if you do have plants in your pond, because they need oxygenated too.
You bet.
The air.
Well, the oxygen in the pond, you brought that up, and we're pretty big on aeration with not only with an air pump, or a waterfall churning up the water and getting air in there, but also like an air pump and air stone like you might see in an aquarium. And that helps the fish stay in an oxygen-rich environment, but it also helps the natural bacteria in the pond to stay healthy and keep the bad bacteria gone.
Right.
You get two anaerobic bacteria is generally sweet smelling. Anaerobic bacteria is kind of like a septic tank, so it'll be nasty and smelly, and you want to try to prevent that.
Right. So you want to make sure you got enough air and enough circulation. You don't want to overdo it. A lot of people sometimes overdo it. You move too many gallons of water per hour, and that's not good either when you turn it over too many times in a 24-hour period.
Well, too much circulation, for instance, water lilies like calm water.
Right.
And they don't like a lot of water splashing on their leaves. They'll tolerate some.
Yeah.
But you don't want to try to stick one right under a waterfall and that sort of thing. But if you put it down at the other end of the pond where things are a little calmer, it does just fine.
All right, Mike, we're going to take a short commercial break, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. You're watching The Paul White Show. Welcome back to the Paul White Show. We're visiting with Mike Kandt from the Kansas Pond Society, and I hope you took my advice at the top of the show and got your pad and pen out and called somebody so they can write all this vital information down who might have the interest of putting in a pond, or if you already got one in and you're wondering why you're having problems with it, if you have any problem with it. Now, everybody don't have problems with it. Some of you out there probably experienced and know what you're doing and got a nice thriving pond with fish and plants, and you sitting beside it whenever applicable and enjoying it. Okay, Mike, before the break we were talking about algae maybe in the ponds and stuff. There are several different types, and a lot of people, like you mentioned when we went to break, have problems with algae. That's one of the bigger problems.
Yeah, this time of the year, Paul, is really when algae is really coming out strong, the stringy algae, and that's the kind that people are most concerned about. First of all, there's several different types, and I am not going to pretend to spout which the botanical names of these, but there is the stringy algae that is long strings of green algae. There is a single cell algae that actually turns your water green, kind of a pea soup color. There is a floating mass algae that floats on the surface of the water. And then there's a kind of algae that grows on the walls of the pond and rocks in the pond. That last kind, when people clean out their ponds, they say, "Oh, I've got to get rid of that." Mm-hmm. No, leave that there. That is the plant that is consuming a lot of the ammonia and fish waste in the pond, and it's actually acting like a filter. So that's the good stuff. You want to leave that there. That's what, if you don't have it, that's what's going to cause the other algae, the single cell algae, to bloom and cause your water to turn green. If you got the stuff on the walls, that'll outcompete the single cell algae, and it tends to keep your water clear. This time of year, we do not have other plants in the pond, such as water lilies or iris or hyacinths, and that kind of stuff. So you do have fish in there, and the fish are generating some waste, and so all of that waste, where does it go? It forms ammonia and nitrites in the water, and the string algae starts to come on with a little bit of sun, and it starts to eat up that waste. That is a good thing, but it can get to be pretty obnoxious, and so I usually get a twirler, maybe get a bottle brush on the end of a broomstick or something like that, twirl it out. You're never going to get it all out. No. And the mat algae, just kind of get a net and net that out. But as later on in the summer, as the plants in your pond start to grow up, they will outcompete the string algae, and they'll starve it out. They'll get the nutrients before the string algae can, and your water will clear up, and your string algae will have a tendency to diminish. If you use an algicide, sometimes in a severe condition, you can use an algicide, but I almost never recommend that, because what does it do? It kills the algae. It creates now even more waste. Let's compost down at the bottom of the pond that fertilizes yet another generation of algae growth, and so it just keeps on going.
Right. So it's kind of a balance that you need to maintain.
Yes.
To and then like you explained, some of the algae that's in the pond, the plants and all that will help you create the balance, so you don't have to mess with all of the allergies. And like I said, when the plant grows up, they starve out a lot of the allergies. Speaking of plants too, what percentage of your pond need to be plants? 20% of it need to be plants?
Well, there are several types of plants. There's, of course, submersible plants that go down below, stay down below the water. There are floating plants such as water hyacinth or water lilies, that kind of thing. And then there are what we call marginals that go around the margin or the edge of the pond in more shallow water. I would say, a lot of those, particularly with water lilies, let's start off with those, you should probably not have more than 2/3 of your pond covered with water lily leaves.
Right, okay.
And it depends, there's some small lilies or some big lilies. Depends on what you get.
Right.
But you should, about 2/3 of your pond covered is good. The marginals, personally I like to get as many as I can, but be careful the kind that you get. There are some plants that will form big, massive roots. And by the way, I put a lot of most of my plants in pots, and then put them in the pond.
Right.
And but if you don't, you got every 2 or 3 years, you still got to pull those out and maintain them, because they'll jump the pot,
Right.
and they'll get massive
up,
roots down in the bottom,
Like mine.
like yours,
Like mine. Yeah.
and they can be very difficult
Right.
to control and get out at that point. And so, but again, I like to keep them in pots. And in fact, for instance, Botanica, all of their water lilies are in pots. And our club is next weekend.
Okay.
Is going to divide the water lily collection there. So it's a huge project. If you're interested, come by and watch us. It'll be April 1st.
Okay.
And
what time are you gonna be there?
oh, we'll be there. We'll start out at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
And probably takes us about a half a day to do that.
Oh, okay.
But
All right, so about 9 to 2 will be in between. That'll be a good time to drop in at Botanica.
if they're interested in seeing how that
maintain them. Yeah.
how it works.
Okay. All right, Mike, we're going to take another short commercial break, and we'll be right back. You're watching the Paul White Show, and we're talking ponds today. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Paul White Show. We're visiting with Mike Kandt, the Kansas Pond Society, and I hope you've been getting some vital information on what to do with your pond and how to take care of a few of the problems that you would have out in the pond done this time of year and throughout the summer to maintain the pond. Mike, now we got a pond in. We know a little bit about how to maintain it. Fish selection for the pond. Overpopulation, underpopulation. Is there a rule of thumb to size? If I got a minnow bucket, I don't want to put 20 fish in the minnow bucket trying to get them to survive. But
well, there is. First of all, when starting out, if you've not had a pond or a water garden before, I would recommend that once you get it finished and get it open, let the water set for a couple weeks before you put fish in there to acclimatize. Be sure you get dechlorinator in there if you've used city water.
Right.
Well water is preferable, but I usually start out with a few goldfish, just feeder goldfish that are inexpensive, and if you lose them,
good testers.
Yeah,
good water testers.
And leave them in there for, just leave them in there.
Yeah.
But after, and that may be all you want in your pond. They will multiply. Sometimes very, very much.
Right.
And but before you go on and get like koi and that sort of thing, and maybe you don't even get koi. A lot of people don't.
Right.
But koi are going to be a lot more temperamental to environmental conditions and so forth. But I'd make sure that you're doing good with the goldfish first before you move on to something else. As I indicated before, native fish such as perch, catfish, that sort of thing. Some catfish, I suppose, would keep the numbers of the goldfish down.
Absolutely.
But that sometimes native fish will actually bring in. If you go catching a catfish and say put it in the pond, they'll bring in some disease and so forth. And so I'd be a little careful about doing that. on overpopulation, that can be the worst thing that can happen to the pond.
Right.
It puts in too much waste. They use up a lot more oxygen.
Right.
The pond can become smelly. It becomes you can't not the water's not clear and so forth. And so be very careful of that. If you get too many goldfish, my recommendation is to give them to a friend. Give them to, if we're involved in the Pond Society, call us. Sometimes we know somebody that wants some.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't find a place to get rid of them, I would just recommend composting them. I'm sorry that sounds cruel, but they do make good compost.
Right.
Do not, whatever you do not put them in a natural waterway, a pond or stream or that sort of thing. That can really mess up the ecosystem, the natural ecosystems, and because they can get a little carried away. Too many fish. What is too many fish? There are rules of thumb, but let's say, let's see if I can remember that now. An inch of fish per square foot of water.
Okay.
And is a rule of thumb I think you can go by. And again, if you have more filtration in the pond, you can support more fish. Less filtration, it'll support less fish.
Right. And a lot of people, I think, when they do that, are not patient enough for the fish to reproduce to get the right amount in there. They want an instant pond. We dug this 20 by 20. We want 150 koi or 150 goldfish in there. They put them all in there at once, and then they run into the problem. If your water's right and they got good living quarters and stuff, they'll reproduce more readily and more often, and then you end up with an overpopulated pond. Then that's when you, like you said, you're trying to dip them out because you lose your balance, your pond balance. Right. Then you start losing fish. Right. For different reasons, aeration, like you said, filtration and all that kind of stuff. So you wonder what's happening to your pond. You need to take it slow, put your few in there, I think, to enjoy your color, enjoy your fish, and give them a chance to reproduce. All of them don't reproduce, but some of them will, enough to sustain your pond eventually to get you some fish in there.
Yeah, and do recognize that the fish do grow.
Right. They do grow, absolutely.
And but I do want to say that if anybody is interested in learning more about ponds, the Kansas Pond Society is a water garden club. We're just a nonprofit group of people interested in water gardens. We meet once a month. The dues are $20 a year. It covers a newsletter and various other things. We will have a pond tour coming up in June 17th and 18th. If you're interested in doing a pond, I think one of the best things you can do is go around and look at other people's ponds, and particularly the pond tour or garden tour is the best way to do that. So our website is www.kansaspondsociety.org. No spaces in there. And so check us out. There's applications online and places to contact people if you have questions.
Right. Some of the flyers will be at P&P Seed and Bait Company. They usually come by every year and drop off a little map of where the ponds are and the houses to visit. So that's in June of this year, when the third weekend. So if you visit P&P before the third weekend, you can pick up a map and a flyer to go and do the pond. We also, Mike, have some nice koi in right now for those who are interested in koi. Last year they bugged me about koi. I couldn't get any with any sizes. Now I think I got some 10 to 12 inches, beautiful color on them, and they're not the real expensive koi, but it's a good deal for you to get started. You know, we also have goldfish that we offer too, from feeder fish all the way up to 10 to 12s. So I do a lot of pond fish because they say I'm less expensive than anybody else in town. So I invite you to come by P&P or give me a call to look at some pond fishing and about your pond. Also, hey, let me remind you, if you got a show that you would like to see done here, go to our email and email me and let me know, and I'll try to do a show on whatever you are interested in watching to do with outdoors. So go to my email and email me. I'm sure I can get them to put it up on the screen, and you can email me on a show that you would like to see done right here on the Paul White Show. Hey, Mike, thanks again for being with us today, full of information, and we hope to follow up with Mike later on in the summer. We're going to actually take you to a pond and let you see a pond and see some fish in it, so we'll be on site doing it. Thanks for watching the Paul White Show. We'll see you next week, same time, same station.